The sun was low in the sky, weak light falling on broken stones and dry soil. The land was dead. Only wind moved, carrying dust and the smell of rot. In the middle of this ruined place lay a woman, not human, but alien, her body thin, her skin pale, her eyes half closed. She had no food, no water, and no hope. Her people had left her. Once she had a husband, once she had a child, once she had a family, but all were gone. Her husband had fallen in war, her child had been taken by sickness, her tribe had whispered that she was cursed, bad luck, unwanted. So they left her here, far from their camp, to die with the flies. The flies were everywhere, landing on her lips, crawling on her hands, biting her skin. She was too weak to push them away, too tired to fight them. Her stomach was empty, only pain inside, each breath slow and heavy. She whispered to herself, "This is the end. No one will come. No one will care." Her eyes looked at the sky, gray clouds above. She thought maybe she would see her family again in death, but death was slow, cruel, and she was trapped in it. Hours passed like heavy chains, and the alien woman felt her soul slipping. She was ready to close her eyes forever. Then, something strange. Footsteps. Not the sound of her people, not the sound of beasts, but steady, careful footsteps on stone. Her eyes moved, weak but curious. A figure was walking. Tall, 2 arms, 2 legs, different from her kind. It was a human. She had heard of humans, stories told in her tribe. Some said humans were monsters, some said they were thieves, some said they were foolish wanderers, but this one was real, standing in the dust, a tired traveler with torn clothes, his face covered in dirt, his eyes tired but sharp. He stopped when he saw her, his shadow falling across her dying body. For a moment she thought he would pass. Why would a human stop for a stranger? And then, Amy, a broken widow left for death. She closed her eyes, waiting for him to leave, but the sound of his steps came closer, slow, heavy, careful. He knelt beside her. The alien woman tried to speak, but her lips were dry, no voice came out. The human reached into his small bag and pulled something out, a piece of food, small, old, but still enough to save a life. Her eyes widened in shock. Why would he waste it on her? The human did not speak at first. He only placed the food in front of her cracked lips. Her weak hands shook, pushing it away. "No, not for me," she whispered, voice broken like dry leaves. "You need it more." The human shook his head, his voice soft but firm. "You need it more than I do." He held the food closer, waiting for her to take it. His eyes showed no fear, no hate, only strange kindness. She felt her heart ache, confused. Her tribe had called her worthless, cursed, abandoned her to die. But this stranger, this human, was offering his last meal. Tears rose in her tired eyes, hot and bitter. She could not understand. She whispered, "Why?" The human only answered, "Because no one should die alone." Her hand shook as she reached, slowly, carefully. She touched the food, held it like treasure. Her mouth opened, her teeth weak but desperate. She took one small bite. The taste was dry, rough, but to her it was sweeter than anything she had ever eaten. Her body felt life return, just a little, but enough. The human sat beside her, quiet, watching. He did not ask for thanks. He did not ask for reward. He only waited, calm, patient. The alien woman ate slowly, every bite heavy with tears. For the first time since her family died, she felt something strange. Hope. Her body was still weak, her heart still broken, but the act of kindness cut through the darkness. She looked at the human again, really looked. He was thin, hungry, tired, but still strong enough to choose kindness over survival. She could not understand it, but she could feel it. This was no monster. This was no fool. This was no thief. This was something else. The flies still swarmed around her. The dust still burned her eyes. The world was still cruel. But now there was one human sitting beside her, refusing to leave her behind. She whispered again, her voice faint, "Why help me, a stranger?" The human looked at her, and his eyes carried the weight of pain, of memory. He answered slowly, "Because someone once saved me when I was starving, and now it is my turn." The alien woman could not reply. Tears filled her eyes, her chest heavy with feelings she could not name. For the first time since her world collapsed, she did not feel alone. She did not feel cursed. She did not feel abandoned. She felt something alive, and she knew this meeting would change everything. The night was colder than the day, the air sharp like knives, the wind carrying a mournful sound across the empty land. The alien woman sat weakly against a stone, the taste of food still in her mouth, her body trembling with both life and fear. Beside her, the human lit a small fire with broken sticks, his hands shaking but steady enough to spark flame. The orange light pushed back the shadows, but not the hunger inside his stomach. He had nothing left, no hidden supplies, no bag full of food, only an empty pouch and the fire before him. That one piece of bread, dry and hard, had been his last meal, yet he had given it away without regret. Now his stomach growled, twisting with pain, but his eyes remained calm. He looked at the alien woman, watching her fight for each breath, and he felt the choice. He had been right. The alien tried to speak, her voice weak and slow. Why? Why would you give me that? You are starving too. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She had seen no kindness in years, only cruelty. Her own people had thrown her away, but this stranger had given more than she thought possible. The human smiled faintly, though his lips were cracked and dry. He answered softly, because sometimes one life saved is worth more than one life lost. She shook her head, still unable to believe. Humans are said to be greedy, selfish, dangerous, yet you gave me your last meal. He shrugged, poking the fire with a stick, the sparks rising into the dark sky. Stories are just stories. Maybe your people never saw the truth, or maybe they only saw the worst of us. His voice carried both sadness and strength, as if he carried his own past wounds. The alien woman could feel it. This human was no simple wanderer. He was someone broken, but unyielding. The fire cracked, small warmth touching their faces. She tried to move her legs, but they were still weak, shaking like leaves in the wind. The human noticed, pulling his worn cloak from his shoulders and placing it around her body. The cloth smelled of sweat and dust, but it was warm, warmer than the cold air biting at her skin. She looked at him in silence, wondering how much he had already lost. Why else would a man share everything with someone like her, a stranger, an abandoned widow marked as cursed? Her voice trembled. You will die if you give everything away. He shook his head, eyes fixed on the fire. No, I will live, because giving keeps me alive. If I keep everything for myself, then I am already dead. Her chest tightened at his words, strange feelings rising inside her. This man had no family here, no tribe, no reason to care for her, yet he gave and gave. She thought of her husband, strong and proud, yet even he would not have shared his last meal with a stranger. This human was different, dangerously different. The wind howled louder, carrying the sound of distant beasts. The human stood, scanning the dark horizon, hand resting on a crude blade tied at his waist. The alien woman watched him, seeing both weakness and strength. He was thin, starved, wounded, but his spirit burned like the fire he had built. A part of her, long dead, began to stir, the part that once believed in hope. Hours passed slowly, the fire shrinking as the night deepened. The human sat back down, tired but alert. The alien whispered again, "Why stay here? Why not leave me? You could still find food, still live." The human turned to her, his eyes reflecting the dying flame. "I cannot leave you. I already chose. I gave you my last meal, so now your life is tied to mine." She gasped softly, shocked by the weight of his words. No one had ever tied themselves to her in such a way, not since her family was alive. It was more than kindness, it was a vow. She felt tears rise again, though she tried to hide them. The flies were gone for now, scared of the fire, but the memory of them still crawled on her skin. The night dragged on, filled with silence broken only by wind, hunger, and distant howls. Yet within that silence, something invisible was forming. A bond, fragile but real, between two broken souls, one alien and one human. The alien woman leaned her head against the stone, her body weak but her heart a little stronger. She whispered in her mind, "Perhaps I was not abandoned by fate. Perhaps I was led to him." The human closed his eyes for a moment, though he did not sleep. He was tired, his body empty, but his spirit refused to rest. He had chosen to give his last meal, and he did not regret it. The alien woman's breathing grew steadier, softer, as sleep claimed her for the first time in days. The human watched her silently, guarding her like a fragile flame in the storm. Above them, the stars burned bright, cold, and endless. Two lives sat beneath them, bound. Now by an act of sacrifice, one had been left to die. The other had chosen to die if it meant she could live. But destiny was shifting, and neither of them yet knew that this one choice, this last meal, would echo far beyond the desert night. Morning came slowly, gray light crawling across the empty land. The fire had died during the night, leaving only ashes and smoke. The human sat with his back against a stone, eyes half closed but still alert. The alien woman stirred, her breathing steady now, her body a little stronger than yesterday. For a long time she lay still, listening to the silence, feeling warmth in her stomach from the food he had given. It was a strange warmth, not only from the bread, but from the act itself. She opened her eyes and looked at him, this strange creature called human, thin and tired, yet steady like the stone he leaned on. Something in her heart whispered that she owed him more than she could repay. She sat up slowly, her arms trembling but no longer useless. The human noticed and gave a small nod, as if proud. "You are stronger today," he said softly, his voice dry from thirst. She looked down, ashamed, and whispered, "Because of you." The words carried weight, heavier than the morning air. In her people's ways, to save a life was to claim it, to bind it in a sacred debt. A life saved could never be forgotten. It had to be returned, no matter the cost. She thought of this and felt the truth sink into her bones. She owed him her life. The human did not speak of debt. He only poked at the ashes, searching for sparks to bring back the fire. His hands were cracked, his lips dry, his hunger worse than before. Yet he said nothing of his own suffering. He only looked at her and asked, "Can you walk?" She tried, her legs weak but willing. She stood slowly, leaning on the stone for balance. Her steps were small, painful, but each one stronger than the last. The human watched her, ready to catch her if she fell. But he did not reach out. He let her fight, let her win her own steps. And that small act gave her dignity back. She looked at him again, her voice quiet but sure. "I owe you my life." The human shook his head, tired eyes soft. "No debt, no chain. I gave because I chose to, nothing more." But she could not accept that. Not in her heart, not in her soul. In her culture, a widow was seen as a burden, a curse, a shadow. No one had ever looked at her as he did. No one had ever offered kindness without demand. If she was alive, it was because of him, and that truth burned brighter than the sun. She bowed her head, whispering to the dust, "Still, I will repay you, even if it takes the rest of my days." The human gave no answer, only a small smile that hid his pain. His stomach twisted again, empty and cruel, but he did not show it. He stood, looking to the horizon where mountains cut the sky. "We should move, this place will not keep us safe." The alien woman followed slowly, her legs shaking, but her will firm. Each step she thought of the food, of his cloak wrapped around her, of his tired eyes watching the night so she could sleep. The debt grew heavier with each breath, yet it did not crush her, it lifted her. She felt alive, truly alive for the first time in months. As they walked, the silence between them was not empty. It was full of unspoken words, full of quiet understanding, full of questions neither dared to ask. At times she looked at him and wondered, who had saved him once? Who had taught him this mercy? But she held her tongue, waiting. The sun rose higher, burning the ground, drying their lips. The human stumbled once, weakness showing in his steps. The alien woman reached out, her hand catching his arm. For the first time she held him up, her strength small but real. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. She thought, "He gave me life. Now I will give him mine if I must." The day dragged on, harsh and endless, yet they did not stop. He carried the weight of her vow inside her, like fire in her chest. When the sun finally fell and night returned, she whispered again, "You may not want a debt, but I carry it still. I will not forget." The human looked at her in the fading light, his face calm but unreadable. Finally he said, "Then repay me by living. Live when the world wants you to die. That is enough." His words sank deep into her soul, heavier than any promise. She realized that survival itself now was no longer for her alone, it was for him too. The stars returned above them, cold and endless. Two shadows moved below, one human, one alien, bound together by bread, fire, and quiet vows. What had begun as an act of mercy was now something greater, a debt of life, fragile yet unbreakable. And though neither could see the path ahead, they both knew their lives were tied together, by choice and by fate. The night was heavy, a sky full of stars, yet no comfort in their cold light. The desert stretched wide and silent, but silence did not mean safety. The human and the alien woman sat close to a small fire, its flames weak, its warmth fragile against the endless dark. The woman's strength was slowly returning, but her body was still thin, her movements still weak. The human remained watchful, his eyes scanning shadows, his hand resting near the crude blade at his side. Far away, faint sounds stirred, the kind of sounds that made even strong men freeze. Growls, low and sharp, carried by the wind, followed by heavy steps pressing into sand and stone. The alien woman stiffened, her breathing quick, her eyes wide with old fear. She whispered, "Hunters," her voice barely more than breath. The human turned to her, his expression calm but serious. "What kind?" she answered. "Scavenger beasts, they track the weak, they smell hunger and death, they will come for us." The fire snapped, sparks rising, but the shadows pressed closer. The human could see shapes moving in the dark, crawling, circling, their eyes glowing faintly like tiny flames. The alien woman tried to stand, but her knees shook, her body not ready for a fight. She looked at him, fear flooding her face. "They will kill us both." The human shook his head, his voice low. "Not if we stay still, not if we wait." He pulled her down beside him, his arms steady against her trembling shoulder. "Do not move. Do not breathe loud. They hunt noise. They hunt panic." The woman pressed against the stone, every muscle in her body tight. She could hear them now, closer, claws scratching rock, teeth snapping in the dark. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would give her away. The human's hand slowly tightened around his blade. He knew he was weak, hungry, tired, yet if one beast came too close, he would strike. The alien woman felt the heat of his body beside her, felt the strength in his stillness. For the first time she realized he was not afraid, or perhaps he had mastered fear until it served him. The calm spread into her, slowing her panic, letting her breathe quieter. Minutes dragged like hours. The hunters circled, their growls rising and falling. One of them stepped closer, its glowing eyes fixed on the fire's dying light. The human leaned forward slightly, ready. The alien woman closed her eyes, whispering in her mind, "If he dies, I die too. I cannot let him fall alone." The beast sniffed the air, snapping its teeth, then turned away, fading back into the shadows. Others followed, their footsteps heavy but moving farther. The circle broke. The sounds drifted into distance. The danger passed. Only silence remained again, heavy and deep. The woman let out a shaking breath she had been holding too long. Her body slumped, weak but alive. The human slowly relaxed his grip on the blade, lowering it back to his side. He looked at her, his voice calm. "They are gone for now." She stared at him in disbelief. "You face them without fear." He shook his head. "No, I face them with patience. Fear is loud, patience is quiet." She felt a strange pull in her chest at his words. He had not fought, he had not run, he had simply endured. That strength was something her people had never taught her, something new, something human. She whispered, "You could have left me to slow them. You could have run alone." The human met her eyes, his voice firm. "I will never leave you, not while you breathe." Tears filled her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. The debt she carried grew heavier, but not like a chain, more like armor, more like fire. She thought of her vow, to repay him, to protect him, and now it burned brighter than ever. She whispered, "Then I will not leave you either. If the hunters return, I will stand with you." The human gave a small smile, tired, but real. "Then we live together, or we fall together, no other way." The alien woman nodded, her fear replaced with resolve. The night was still dangerous, but now her heart felt stronger than the beasts outside. They sat in silence, the fire fading to ash, the desert stretching wide and endless around them. But in that silence there was no longer loneliness. There was a bond, tested in darkness, held together by patience and promise. The hunters had not taken their lives, but they had left something else behind. A truth, clear as the stars above. This human was not her savior alone. He was her shield, her companion, her bond. And she was no longer just a dying widow. She was someone tied to him by fate and by choice. Together they would face beasts, hunger, and even death. And each time she knew the hunters would not only come from the dark outside, some would come from the darkness within, waiting for their courage to fail. But as long as they stood side by side, she believed they would endure. The hunters had come and gone, but the memory of that night would stay forever. It was the first time she felt not like prey, not like a curse, but like someone worth fighting for. And for that, she silently thanked the human, even if he would never ask for thanks. The night after the hunters had passed was long, filled with silence that pressed heavy on the mind. The human kept the fire alive with small sticks, though his body begged for rest. The alien woman sat close, her eyes staring into the flames, but her thoughts far away. Her heart carried a weight she had not spoken aloud, a truth buried deep, waiting to be uncovered. For hours she said nothing, only the crackle of fire and the soft sound of wind filled the air. But finally, as the fire grew smaller and the stars grew brighter, she spoke. Her voice was low, trembling, almost ashamed. "You do not know who I was. You only see what I am now, a starving widow left to die." The human turned his head, his eyes steady, waiting. She drew a breath, slow and heavy, and began. "I was not always like this. I was not always cursed. Once I was part of a proud family. My husband was a leader, strong and brave. My child was bright as the sun." Her words broke, her throat tight, but she forced herself to continue. "Then war came, fire and steel, death without mercy. My husband was taken by battle, my child by sickness after, and my tribe, they looked at me as if I carried death itself. The fire popped, sparks flying, but her voice was colder than the night. They whispered that I was cursed, that wherever I went, misfortune followed. When food was short, they blamed me. When sickness spread, they blamed me. When the war broke us, they pointed their fingers at me. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice cracked. And so they abandoned me, left me in the Baustes, a wasteland, told me to join my family in the grave. She covered her face with her thin hands, her body shaking with the memory. The human listened, silent, no judgment in his eyes, no pity in his expression, only quiet understanding. After a long moment he spoke, his voice steady and calm. They were wrong. You are not cursed. You are alive. That is not a curse. That is strength. The alien woman looked at him, her tears shining in the firelight. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered. No one. Her people had turned their backs. Her tribe had spoken only cruelty. But this human, this stranger, gave her words that felt like a shield. Her heart trembled, confused and grateful at the same time. But then the human lowered his gaze, and his voice grew heavy. You are not the only one who lost everything. She leaned closer, listening. My family was taken too, not by war of your kind, but by hunger, by violence, by choices I could not stop. He paused, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with memory. I buried them with my own hands, one after another, until the ground itself seemed to cry with me. The alien woman gasped softly, the weight of his words cutting through her pain. You lost them too, she whispered. He nodded, slow and tired. And after that, I walked alone, with nothing but my guilt and my hunger, until I found you. For a long moment, silence wrapped around them, not empty, but full of shared grief. Two souls broken by loss, two lives shaped by death, now sitting side by side, breathing the same night air. The alien woman felt her heart shift. The debt she owed him grew deeper, but so did something else. Not only did he save her, he understood her. He carried wounds that matched her own. She wiped her tears with trembling fingers, her voice steadier now. Then perhaps fate was not cruel. Perhaps it placed us together because we were the same. Both abandoned, both broken. The human gave a faint smile, though sadness still lingered in his eyes. Or perhaps fate gave us one last chance to rise again, not for ourselves, but for each other. The fire faded to glowing embers, the night colder, but neither of them felt alone anymore. The alien woman leaned back against the stone, her body tired, but her heart lighter. She thought of her husband and child, their faces fading in memory, and she whispered to them in silence, I will live not only for you, but for this man who gave me life when all others left me. The human closed his eyes briefly, his hand resting near the blade at his side. He too carried ghosts, but with her beside him, the burden felt less, the night less cruel. They were two strangers from different worlds, yet bound by the same pain. In that bond, something stronger than despair was being born. The stars above watched silently, cold and distant, but beneath them, by a dying fire, two broken souls found a piece of healing in each other's truths. Secrets had been spoken, wounds had been revealed, yet instead of breaking them, it made them whole. And though the road ahead promised more danger, more hunger, and more trials, they knew one thing now, neither of them would ever face it alone again. The morning sun rose weakly over the barren land, its light pale, its warmth thin. The human and the alien woman walked slowly, their shadows stretching long behind them. The desert was endless, yet they moved forward step by step, refusing to stop. Both had nothing but hunger in their stomachs and hope in their hearts. The alien woman still felt her body weak, but she no longer dragged herself. Each step was fueled by determination, by the memory of his sacrifice, by the vow she carried inside. She looked at the human walking ahead, his back straight though his legs trembled with exhaustion. She whispered softly, almost to hers, Elif, I will not let him fall, not while I breathe. By midday the heat grew harsh, the wind carried dust that burned the eyes. The human stopped near a pile of broken stones, lowering his tired body to rest. The alien woman sat beside him, both breathing heavy, both silent for a while. Finally she turned to him, her voice steady. You saved me, you gave me food, you gave me warmth, you gave me hope. Now it is my turn, I promise you, I will fight for you, I will not let you die alone. The human looked at her, his face serious but touched by a faint smile. Words are easy, survival is not. It demands more than promises. It demands action. Her eyes did not waver, her voice strong. Then I will act, I will hunt, I will share, I will bleed if I must. I carry a debt, and I will not rest until it is repaid. The human studied her for a moment, his tired eyes seeing truth in her voice. He nodded, slow and firm. Then we make a pact. No matter what comes, we survive together. She felt her chest swell, the vow binding them tighter, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. Together they placed their hands on the dusty ground, side by side, sealing the promise in silence. The day dragged on, their steps heavy but driven. When the sun began to fall, they found a dry tree standing alone in the desert, its branches twisted, its roots clinging to cracked earth. There, the human showed her how to dig near the roots, searching for water hidden deep. Their fingers clawed through dirt until they found damp soil. Drops of water seeped out, small but precious, and they drank together, life flowing back into their bodies. The alien woman looked at him in awe, her voice soft. You knew this. You saved us again. The human wiped dirt from his hands, shaking his head. I only learned through pain. Wandering alone teaches many lessons, but some cost too much. His eyes grew distant, remembering, the woman wanted to ask, but she stayed quiet, respecting the shadows of his past. As night fell, they built a small fire with dry branches from the tree. The alien woman brought stones to circle the flames, working with trembling hands, yet proud to help. The human watched her, nodding with quiet approval. You learn quickly, he said. She answered firmly. I must, because I promised. They shared silence again, but it was not empty. It was filled with the bond of their vow, with the unspoken knowledge that each would now carry the other's life. The alien woman thought of her tribe, the people who had abandoned her. None of them had ever shared so much. None had given as much as this human had given in a few days. She realized then, her debt was no longer just about repayment. It was about choice, about standing beside him even when it was easier to run. The night grew colder, the fire small. The human leaned back against the tree, exhaustion heavy on his face. The alien woman sat close, pulling the cloak he had given her tighter. She glanced at him, her voice gentle. You said once that someone saved you before. Who was it? The human's eyes opened slowly, shadows flickering in the firelight. A stranger, like you. I was starving, I was broken. And they gave me their food, they gave me life. I never saw them again, but I carried their act with me. I chose to pass it forward. The alien woman felt her chest tighten, her eyes soft with respect. So you saved me because someone saved you, and now I promise I will save you too. The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then the chain continues, one life saving another. Perhaps that is the only way we endure in this world. His voice grew weaker as sleep claimed him, his head leaning against the tree. The alien woman watched him in silence, her heart burning with the weight of her vow. She whispered softly, Rest, I will guard tonight. Your promise is mine now. And so she sat, her thin beasts, Odie holding strong against the cold wind, her eyes fixed on the shadows beyond the fire. She listened for beasts, for danger, ready to stand if needed. Her fear was still there, but beneath it was something new, courage. The stars stretched above them, endless and bright. The desert lay silent, but within that silence, two lives had made a pact, a promise of survival, born of sacrifice and bound by choice. And though tomorrow's trials would come, though hunger and danger would return, neither of them would walk alone again, not while their vow remained. The desert stretched without end, days passing like slow rivers of pain. The human and the alien woman walked together, step by step, each carrying the weight of hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. But their vow kept them alive, their promise stronger than weakness. They had survived storms, beasts, and the sharp claws of despair. Yet one final trial was waiting. On the fifth night, the sky turned black with clouds, thunder rolling like war drums across the horizon. The wind rose sharp, carrying sand in wild waves, cutting their skin and blinding their eyes. The human shouted above the storm, We must find shelter. The alien woman clung to his arm, her voice lost in the roar. Where? There is nothing here. The storm grew, lightning striking the ground, fire flashing across the sky. They stumbled through darkness until they found a broken ruin, half buried in the sand. Inside they crouched, the stone walls shaking under the fury of the storm. Water poured in from cracks, the cold soaking them both, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. The alien woman pressed her back against the wall, her heart racing. She looked at the human, his face pale, his lips trembling, his body shaking. He had given too much, lost too much strength. Hunger had eaten him from within. She reached for him, her hands gripping his shoulders. Fayed, or tightening her chest. No, you will not die, not now. The human tried to smile, but his eyes closed halfway, his voice faint. Perhaps this is where it ends. Perhaps my path was only to carry you this far. The alien woman shook her head, tears running with the rain. No, do not speak that way. You gave me life. You gave me hope. I swore I would save you too. She searched her pouch, found only scraps, nothing enough to keep him alive. Her heart screamed inside her chest, the weight of her debt pressing harder than ever. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering through tears, "If death wants you, then it will have to take me too." The storm roared louder. The ruin groaned under the pressure. The human's breathing slowed, his head falling against her shoulder. The alien woman clenched her fists, her voice rising, fierce and desperate. "No, not like this. We promised. We survive together. We rise together." She pushed him gently against the wall, then rose with trembling legs. Her eyes scanned the ruin, and in the far corner, water dripped from a crack in the stone. She rushed to it, cupping her hands, bringing the drops to his lips. He drank weakly, his chest rising again, life returning slowly. She stayed by his side through the night, feeding him drop by drop. Every breath he took was a victory, every heartbeat a gift. By dawn, the storm passed, the world outside washed clean by rain. The human opened his eyes, weak but alive, and whispered, "You kept your promise." The alien woman smiled through tears, her voice soft but strong. "Yes, I kept it, and I will keep it again, as many times as it takes." Their bond had been sealed before, but now it was forged in fire and storm, unbreakable, unshakable. Two souls carrying each other through death and into life. When the sun rose high, they stepped out of the ruin, the desert shining with fresh streams left by the storm. For the first time in many days, they drank for Ely, water cooling their throats, hope filling their hearts. The alien woman looked at the horizon, her eyes steady. "Before, I was only waiting to die. Now, I walk toward life, because of you." The human nodded, his face calm but filled with quiet pride. "And I walk because of you. You turned my sacrifice into meaning. You carried me when I was falling. We are no longer two survivors. We are one path." They walked on, stronger together, each step no longer dragged by despair, but lifted by purpose. The alien woman no longer thought of herself as cursed. She no longer believed the whispers of her tribe. She had been left to die, but she had found something greater than her tribe, greater than her past. She had found a bond that turned death into destiny. The human too carried no regret. His last meal given had not been wasted. It had grown into something larger, something brighter, a future neither had expected. Together, they had faced beasts, hunger, storms, and despair. Together they had risen each time, refusing to fall. And though the desert still stretched endless before them, though danger still waited beyond every horizon, they no longer feared it. For in the heart of two broken souls had grown a strength stronger than war, stronger than loss, stronger than death itself, the strength of mercy, of sacrifice, of love waiting to be born. As the sun set once more, painting the sky in fire, the alien woman turned to the human, her voice soft but full of promise. "I was abandoned to die, but because of you, I now live, and I will walk with you, wherever destiny leads." The human met her gaze, his voice steady, "And I will walk with you, until the end of every path." The desert swallowed their footsteps, the stars lit their journey, and so their story did not end in death, but began in destiny. Two lives bound forever, a widow saved by mercy, and a human who got. For his last meal, together they walked, not as strangers, but as the beginning of something greater than either alone.